If you like this video, make sure to subscribe to Downfall Network for more cool content. What's up everyone, Thralls here once again. I am Nick Crockneck, and I'm going to go through some more underrated albums. I'm going to do part 2 for stoner metal, since I had a lot of it to go through, and there were some other ones I definitely wanted to bring up that I think kind of fly under the radar a little bit, or just maybe a little bit more obscure. This has been really fun going through the stoner metal stuff because it's probably the closest one that gets like near rock, or at least like retro rock, like 70s rock and stuff. But at the same time, it can be absolutely crushingly heavy, so you get a lot of interesting ends of the spectrum where it's decidedly more accessible to, Jesus Christ, that's almost just noise. So I got 10 more for you, so we're going to get right into it. Goblin Cock, Come With Me If You Want to Live. What a name. This is a very tongue-in-cheek stoner metal / doom metal project from Rob Crow, who actually fronts the band Pinback, which is very lighthearted, more indie stuff, so very removed from this, which is very sludgy, stonery doom metal, or more doomy stoner metal. I don't know, it's kind of either or. The fact that it's kind of lighthearted and this is very tongue-in-cheek, like if you look at the song titles, Big Up Your Willies, Beneath the Valley of the Island of Misfit Toys, you know it's not super serious, so it kind of takes away from the doom aspect. That sure, it has all the doom atmosphere, but it's too lighthearted to really have the doom feeling. This is a really fun album. It's just very strange. The songwriting is very off-kilter, and it's just fun, which is kind of a contrast to, like, you know, some of the imagery, because everyone's wearing shrouds and stuff in this band, just to look creepy, but it's a lot of fun. I mean, how serious can you expect the subject matter to be from a band called Goblin Cock? They have 2 other albums. I don't have their first one or their most recent one, which was like Necronama Donkey Kong or something like that. It was very hard to pronounce. But I really enjoyed this album. It's goofy, but it's fun, and man, it has some huge droning guitars on here. And there's some really, like, legit vocal hooks in here with some really cool, like, clever harmonies. Sometimes it gets more into, like, that sort of heavy alternative realm. Like, some of it reminds me a lot of Melvin's, especially some of their earlier stuff. But overall, if you're looking for just something that is not so serious, but still heavy and fun, check this out. Carrera The Quintessential. This came out on Small Stone Records in 2009, and this one is almost entirely instrumental, except for the last track, which I believe is a cover. The rest of this is a instrumental blues rock, space rock, stoner metal, I guess improvisational band. Like, there's a lot of stuff that are extended jams on here. You definitely hear that sort of thing on the track New Orleans for sure. And this is just kind of a cool throwback sort of jam. Like, it definitely reminds me a lot of a band like Earthless, except I think you get a little bit more blues rock on here. Not necessarily super heavy, but I guess the overall feel of the album is heavy, like in terms of the atmosphere they generate. It definitely has a lot of that Hawkwind sort of vibe in it. I believe this is their 4th album, if you count live albums too, because I believe they had one album that was just live. I don't know, I only have 2 of their albums, and this was the first one I ever got, and I really enjoyed it because it was just sort of a fun, stonery jam. So if you're into that sort of thing, definitely check this out. Bison, or Bison BC, Quiet Earth. This was their debut in 2008 on Metal Blade Records, and this was a stoner metal / sludge metal band from Vancouver. Now, they moved on to pretty much just straight sludge metal and maybe like a bit of post-metal atmosphere on their most recent album, which I thought was really good. But this definitely had more of those earlier, like, sludgy roots. Like, there's definitely stuff in here that reminded me a bit of, like, Acid Bath. But at the same time, you had a lot of, like, big Black Sabbath riffs. And this kind of came at a point where Mastodon was starting to gain popularity, so they had a lot of Mastodon sounds in there, too. Really great guitar harmonies, and this was very heavy stoner metal. Like, the vocals were predominantly more harsher, and the guitar tone was definitely more crunchy than it was fuzzy. I also like the fact that there are some punk elements in here. There's definitely stuff that remind me of, like, sludgy punk like Black Tusk, or they were like sludgy hardcore. Overall, I really enjoyed this release. This was a really fun, heavy stoner metal one. This wasn't the laid-back jam. And the last couple of tracks in here, especially the instrumental Medication, are just absolute bangers, loaded with just killer guitar harmonies and just super heavy crushing riffs. Absolutely love this release. I have all their other albums too, which are all really good. They definitely have changed a little bit, but this debut definitely got me into them. So definitely check this out. Callous, self-titled. This came out in 2006 on TP Records, and this was kind of a supergroup, I guess. The main reason I guess you can call it a supergroup is because it featured Matt Pike from High on Fire and Sleep on just vocals. He actually didn't contribute on guitars in this. The rest of the bands on here were definitely more unknown, and I probably should have wrote them down just for good measure, but I didn't, so I forgot them, so sorry. This was only a one-off album. They pretty much broke up not too long after this, probably due to scheduling conflicts with everyone else's bands. This was just straight-up stoner metal. It had a very soulful vocal performance from Matt Pike especially. It was definitely less gristled than what he does in High on Fire. There was definitely more crooning in this. Now, granted, he still has his token raspy voice in this, but it definitely had a totally different feel on here. And riff-wise, I think it was good, but it definitely could have benefited from maybe Matt Pike being on guitar, or at least like throwing in some more writing flares on there. Not that the stuff on here is bad, it just kind of lacks the punch you'd find on a High on Fire album or a Sleep album. This was pretty much kind of ignored when it came out, and I thought it was pretty decent. Granted, you know, of course, I went for High on Fire and Sleep and all the other stuff that he's involved in a little bit more, but this was still really good. And I definitely think it warrants some more attention just because I thought it was a pretty solid effort from all these guys. And about the only thing I could say about it is maybe the guitars could have been a little bit heavier, but overall, it's pretty solid stoner metal. So definitely check it out. Mars Red Sky, Stranded in Arcadia. This came out in 2014 on Listable Records, and this one is a really interesting blend of more psychedelic stoner metal and straight-up droning stoner metal. Really interesting contrast, especially when you compare the production. You get stuff that is very old school in terms of recording, like very analog sounding, versus stuff that sounds very digital too, so it's very interesting. The vocals are predominantly very high register, and there's something about them that remind me more of glam rock, like David Bowie and T-Rex and New York Dolls, rather than stoner metal. Now, the guitar tone, and the bass tone for that matter, are unbelievably low. These guys definitely excel at the drone tone, and this album absolutely rattles speakers if the bass is up. I really enjoyed this listen. It's very strange. It has sort of this kind of haunting psychedelic aspect to it, which I imagine is what they were going for. But the contrast and the feel between especially the vocals and some of the more heavy spots and that psychedelic kind of stoner metal versus almost that kind of glam rock feel in spots, it's just a really wild listen. I actually have another one of their albums that came out here recently, I think last year, and that was really good too, but this was the one that really got me into them, and I definitely recommend checking these guys out, especially if you want to hear an ungodly low droning guitar tone, especially. Really solid band, though. Check them out. Pearls and Brass, The Indian Tower. This came out in 2005 on Drag City Records, and this is a straight-up stoner rock band from Nazareth, Pennsylvania. Now, I wouldn't say necessarily this is very metal, but it is definitely very stoner rock. Like, this really goes back to those Black Sabbath and Deep Purple roots and very much stays there. These guys only had 2 albums before splitting in 2012, but this album in particular seemed to catch the mainstream attention somewhat. I kept hearing about this album. It kept popping up in magazines and such. So I finally picked it up, and this is a really good jam. Very much laboring that nice little blues rock pocket. I like how they use a lot of interesting off-time rhythms in here, and the vocal cadences are very distinct. Face of God, especially, is one great example of that, but this whole album is just loaded with just lots of fun, groovy songs with lots of great blues rock riffs, great vocal harmonies. It's just a fun time. I really wish these guys would get back together, especially now that bands like Graveyard and Rival Sons have actually gained some steam. These guys would fit right in this pack, and technically they were kind of doing it earlier on too, so I think they'd fit right in. Definitely check this out. This is definitely an underrated gem for sure. Forming the Void, Rift. Now, this one I actually brought up before after I went to the Ohio Doomed and Stone Fest, and actually I think I put them in a collection update too. This is some awesome stoner metal from Lafayette, Louisiana. This came out on Cosmic Artifacts mail order label. Thrown together, that's a pretty small label if they're only doing mail order stuff. They have a new album, I believe that just came out on Ripple Music. This is just awesome stoner doom. It is very dense, it is very heavy. I love the booming bellowed vocals that are on here, and there's some really great vocal harmonies on here, which pretty much appear all throughout their career, because when I saw them, I bought all of their albums that were available because their live performance was absolutely killer. This is definitely a nice balance between, you know, big riffy stoner metal and then like more of a droning stoner metal. It never really gets super slow like you would expect drone to get, but it definitely has its bigger, sludgier moments on here for sure. I absolutely love this album. I love all their albums. I think all three of them that I've heard have been really good. I'm looking forward to actually getting a copy of the new one for sure. But definitely check these guys out. I'm really hoping these guys blow up because they have a incredible sound. Check them out. Gage. This EP came out in Ripple Music in 2014, and this is a straight up stoner rock, blues rock, psychedelic rock band from New York. And just to clear the air, they have nothing to do with Geezer Butler. It's just the name. So Geezer does not pop up in here, but he would actually probably fit right in with this band because it is very blues-drenched stoner metal. There's even some spots that remind me of ZZ Top, especially their earlier stuff. The 14-minute track on here, Tales of Murder and Unkindness, definitely kind of captures everything they do in one giant, huge jam track. And that's pretty much the feel on this, is just sort of this dingy blues rock jam session where they're just pretty much having fun, but keeping things nice and heavy, at least as far as the mood's concerned. There are definitely some softer spots on here, but most of this pretty much stays very drenched in that heavy blues rock, like a really dingy version of Clutch. Definitely a fun listen. I need to check out the rest of their albums because this is just an EP. Now, granted, it is a longer EP because, again, you have a 14-minute track on here. Most of the tracks in here are pretty much over the 4-minute mark, so pretty good size EP. But I'm definitely interested in finding more for sure. Definitely check these guys out. Saviours, Into Abbadon. I was kind of hoping this band would blow up when I first heard this album because this came out on the same label as The Sword when they put out Age of Winters. Kamado Records, which had some killer samplers back then too that I really enjoyed. This band in particular, I really liked their blend of stoner metal and then sort of thrash metal and heavy metal, like classic heavy metal or trad metal. Lots of great guitar harmonies. Like they definitely had like those touches of early Iron Maiden and even Thin Lizzy in here, but a nice thrashy, chuggy backbone. The only thing that really was a drawback on here were the vocals. They were kind of just a standard thrash bark, and they really weren't very tuneful. They were kind of flat. But, my God, just riff after riff. This was pretty much a lot like Age of Winters, except I think the thrash metal aspects really came out more, and, man, it was just heavy. This whole album is absolutely killer. And these guys are still around, still put out albums pretty frequently. I have all of them. And this one has always been my favorite because this is what got me into them. And again, this is just loaded with tons and tons of riffs and hooks. It's absolutely killer. Definitely check this band out. Check out this release. Check out any of their releases, honestly, because they're all really good. And finally, we have the Mushroom River Band, Simsalabim. This came out in 2002 on Meteor City, and don't be fooled by this pretty goofy cover. This was actually some pretty heavy stuff, at least like heavy on the rock spectrum. This is definitely stoner metal, but it has a lot of just sort of classic riffy rock behind it. And honestly, the guitar tone is almost kind of reminiscent of Death and Roll, especially like Entombed Wolverine Blues. That might have something to do with the fact that they're Swedish, but probably not. The tone on here is really heavy. I love how high energy pretty much all these songs are. They really don't take a break. Now, these guys unfortunately broke up in 2004, and I hear their first album's even better than this one, but this is the one I have, and I thoroughly enjoyed it way back when. Definitely check out this band. It's definitely an underrated gem as far as stoner metal goes, because, I mean, honestly, a lot of people may have looked at this album cover and thought, I don't know about that, but covers are misleading. Inside, a lot of killer jams. Definitely check it out. Alright, well that pretty much knocks out stoner metal, at least for a little while. I think 2 volumes of stoner metal should be good for you guys. Not sure what we're going to move on to next as far as underrated albums, but it might take a nice little break and see what I can dig up in terms of just underrated music in general. But I definitely will be back doing this series because I really enjoy this one especially. So, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe because we do stuff like this all the time. Catch you guys later.